welcome to the Festival of Storytellers.
I can't tell you how excited I am to be on right now. It's been a couple of weeks of excitement getting prepared, and I've done a lot of things in my life, but this has got to be close to the top.
Thank you, Reader's Magnet, and thank you, John, for putting this forth and taking the chance on our authors in presenting this out to the world.
I've enjoyed this immensely, Joanne.
Ellie, so have I. Thank you for who you are, and thank you, Reader's Magnet. You all are beautiful, and you've worked so very hard, and we are blessed.
We are.
I thank everybody that's involved with this process, because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers. We thank Reader's Magnet and everybody that's involved. I love Reader's Magnet. They say, we share your stories with the world.
Good afternoon, and welcome back to those of you who have been with me before, and a warm welcome to anyone who's new, who have not heard one of my discussions. I'm Margaret Krivchenia, and I have been publishing books for over 6 years. I'm the author of the Four Cousins Mystery Series, which is a series of 4 books. The first is The Ghost of Canyon Camp. The second, The Haunted Lighthouse, that I talked about on Halloween. The third is The Secret of the Broken Arrow Mine, which I am going to be talking about today. And the last one, which I'm going to talk about, is The Case of the Mysterious Mansion. It is a Christmas mystery. I also have been spending a few days on my first adult novel, which is called Evermore. This is near and dear to my heart. I talked about it yesterday. I'm going to return to it on Friday again. It is the story of my family. It's historical romance and mystery. It's just a beautiful, beautiful, heartwarming story of faith, the endurance of the human spirit through joys, tragedies, and sufferings, and how, through the help of God, you can come out on the other side and be whole again. So today we're going to have some fun. And today I want you to put on your riding boots, because we're going to go out west, and we're going to return to the Yellowstone area, to Montana and Wyoming, with the Four Cousins. And as I told you before, I am the author of the Four Cousins Mystery Series. Now, I have not always been an author. I absolutely love it. I've been publishing for the past 6 years. But you know what? I grew up in Michigan. I started out as a teacher of English literature. I was then a voice major. I got my master's from the University of Michigan in counseling, and I am now living in Florida, in the Tampa Bay area, in a town called Palm Harbor, which is right on the Gulf. And we were very blessed that we weren't hit by Hurricane Ian, but the wonderful little island we love so much, Sanibel Island, was pretty much destroyed. So we pray for all those people in Southwest Florida. So I live in the Tampa Bay area. My husband, my 2 sons and daughter-in-laws, and my 4 grandchildren. My 4 grandchildren are the inspiration for the Four Cousins Mystery Series. And I began writing when I retired. As I said, I was a counselor for 24 years here at the high school. And so all of my family lives right around this area. I'm blessed. Thank you, Jesus. And so I started telling stories with them. And when they were really little, and they would spend the night, and pretty soon I was writing down these stories and putting them in big scrapbooks, illustrating the scrapbooks, and I would give them these stories for birthdays and Christmas and other holidays. And then pretty soon they started growing up, and I thought, you know what? I love to write. I think I'm going to create a series. And I did. It is called the Four Cousins Mystery Series. And the very first book in it is The Ghost of Canyon Camp. Now, this takes place in Yellowstone. And today, when we start with The Secret of the Broken Arrow Mine, we're going to go back to Montana and Yellowstone. The haunted lighthouse that I read excerpts on Monday is in Sanibel Island. And the one I'm going to read for you tomorrow and discuss is The Case of the Mysterious Mansion in Asheville, North Carolina. Now, the Four Cousins Mystery Series started out, of course, the inspiration was my grandchildren, and it comes from my love of detective stories and mysteries. When I grew up, my house was like a library. My mom loved to read, and so I had all kinds of books. I loved the Nancy Drew series. I loved the Hardy Boys. I loved, the Brontes as I got older, Wuthering Heights, Jane Eyre, all of those. That's why I ended up being an English major. So I love that. So this was kind of like my very, very own um, classroom was all the books I read. I learned the various styles of writing. I learned telling in the first person or the third person and creating characters. So I want to tell you a little bit about one of the questions someone had for me last week was, do you have favorite characters? Well, yes, I do. And of course, my very, very favorite, my grandchildren, who are the four cousins in the mystery series. But in each one of my books, I create characters that are memorable. I love them. And in The Ghost of Canyon Camp, it was Jimmy. Jimmy's the 15-year-old boy that's lost. He hides out in Yellowstone. He ends up being the Ghost of Canyon Camp. In the haunted lighthouse, I had Mac, the old fisherman whose relatives were the lighthouse keeper, and he sits by the Sanibel lighthouse repairing nets, and he becomes best friends with the four cousins. He has a rich past. And of course, some of the modern day pirates there also, who turn their lives around because of the four cousins. In the four cousins, they always turn someone's life around and show them the right way to live. They pray, they have a great faith in God. And so my message is to get out to all children that, to honor your parents, to obey them, to bless and thank God for everything He's given you, and to help others through kindness and mercy. So by the time we get to the Broken Arrow Mine, now this is one of my very favorite characters in The Secret of the Broken Arrow Mine is Tommy. Tommy is a 10-year-old little boy. He lives at the Flying J Ranch in Wyoming, J for Jesus, and he lives with over 100 boys. They're orphan boys. They're taken care of by Father Mike and a whole staff of people. They live in various, log cabins all over. It's a big, big ranch with lots and lots of acres and lots of horses. I love horses. So Tommy comes to them. His father was a forest fire. Forest fire fighter. And in the Bighorn Mountains, which are near in Wyoming, there was a fire. His father lost his life there. Tommy, because of that, is unable to speak. It's been such a traumatic event for him. He does not have any relatives, and he comes to the Flying J Ranch, where we have JW, and JW is Jimmy. Jimmy from the first book, he ends up coming to the Flying J Ranch. He is taken in by Father Mike, and he becomes his right-hand man. He befriends Tommy. So I like to have my characters like follow from one book to the next, and then we kind of resolve their life. Now, I always have to think of the plot, what's going to be the climax of the story, and I have to think, What's going to be the end? Now, the tough part in writing it is knowing where you want to go with it, but then, how is it going to resolve itself? So that's difficult. I have to think about it. And sometimes I'll write something, like in Evermore, I wrote in a chapter and I thought, I don't know where I'm going with this. So I deleted it and started over because everything needs to hang together. I want it to come full circle. I want it to resolve itself. So I always have an epilogue at the end, and it usually will take place after a few, like a few months, few years, so people can see what happened to all these characters. So, The Secret of the Broken Arrow Mind, and here's the cover of it. You see the mine, you see the four children, and one of them is even wearing a hat like mine. And so I'm going to read some of the excerpts from it, but I want to lay the groundwork for you. The four cousins are going back to Wyoming and Montana. They're going to visit Jimmy at the Flying J Ranch. Remember, I told you he was the ghost of Canyon Camp. So they get to see Jimmy, who's now 16. He's grown up. He's driving. He picks him up at the airport. They go out to the Flying J Ranch. They have their parents are there. They have their own log cabins they're staying in. They get to meet Tommy, who, of course, doesn't speak, but he bonds with Harrison and Parker, and they have superheroes. He shows them his. And so what you have there is, I wanted to go back there. My husband and I love the West. We love Yellowstone. We love Montana, Wyoming. We love horses. I grew up in Michigan, but I was fascinated by horses. I love the story of Fury. I just loved it. A Wildfire, another one of my favorite books. So I wanted to go back there and have the four cousins be on a ranch. So I would say that this book required the most research on my part because I researched the ghost town of Kerwin, which is an honest to goodness town in Wyoming, and Kerwin has a wonderful past. Kerwin they believe there was gold in the mountains. So miners just flooded during the gold rush of the 1800s out to Kerwin, and they were searching for gold. There ended up being a huge avalanche snowstorm, buried the town, and the miners fled and they never came back. So the legend is there that there is gold in the mines in this Wolf Shaft mine of Kerwin. And so I call it the Broken Arrow Mine in the book. That's my made up name for it. So the four cousins go out to the ranch. Jimmy has a whole, they're going to be there a couple weeks. He has all these events planned for them. One is to visit the ghost town of Kerwin. Another is to meet Chief Joseph and Shooting Star, which are two very major characters that I just love in this book. Chief Joseph was a real person. He was head of the Nez Perce Indians in the 1800s when they were trying to flee into Canada, get away from the U.S. cavalry because they didn't want to be on a reservation. So they fled through Montana, Wyoming. They did not make it to Canada. Their flight failed and they were captured. So I wanted to research them. And so I studied Chief Joseph. And if ever you've been out to that area, there is a Chief Joseph Highway, which goes through the mountains. It's Beartooth Mountains, and they're spectacular. You can go up 12,000 feet. So my husband and I love that. So that was an inspiration for this story. So we stayed on a ranch out there. And so this ranch, I really expanded. Wild Mustang Shooting Star is the granddaughter of Chief Joseph in this story. Chief Joseph in the story is a descendant of the original Chief Joseph. Shooting Star is his granddaughter. She's all grown up. She's also a veterinarian. She's graduated from the University of Wyoming, and her love is the Wild Mustang. So they're part of the story also. So what occurs is that some of the events are that they get to go down to Thermopolis, which is a big dinosaur area in Wyoming, and they get to see all the dinosaurs. They also, get to see petroglyphs. Petroglyphs are drawings on rocks or in caves that Native Americans may have put there. They tell stories. So I put those in the book and drawings of those. So I do include historical parts because don't forget these books are for 8 to 12. So the 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 10-year-old, they just love the action and the adventure. The older children, I try and teach them about the area they're going to. So I do include some information on the Nez Perce Indians, on Chief Joseph, on this area of the dinosaurs, the petroglyphs, just so they can learn, because I like them to learn as well as be excited about the book. So the setting here now, they are at the ranch. They are now going to go to Kerwin, and Kerwin is abandoned. It's called a ghost town, and the parents have rented Jeeps because you've got to have Jeeps to get over this very rocky, twisty mountain road up to Kerwin. So they're going up to Kerwin, and Shooting Star has a huge black stallion called Raven, and she is very, very well, she knows all of the trails through the mountains and through the forest. So she's following them because she senses that there's going to be problems. Chief Joseph, her grandfather, has warned them not to go there. He tells them the tale of the broken arrows and of the Nez Perce. He's very concerned. So she's following these families on her horse, and she is concerned for them. So they get to Kerwin. There is a river they must cross. They are crossing the river and they're hearing thunder in the background. They know that a storm is coming. The Jeeps get across. They get across the river and suddenly lightning strikes. And this huge lodgepole pine goes over the river and it traps them. They can no longer go back the way they've come. So when I was writing this book, it probably took me a good 4 months or so to write it, writing every day. And so I thought, what am I going to do with this town of Kerwin? So they go into Kerwin and they thought, okay, we're going to, they look and they say, okay, we're here. Don't worry. Shooting Stars saw this. She'll go back, get horses. We're going to be okay. So they go into the town of Kerwin and they explore. And pretty soon they see that this storm is coming into them. It's going to come upon them. They've got to take shelter. So they empty their Jeeps. They brought food. They bought snacks. They have blankets. They have lanterns and flashlights because they were going to do a lot of exploring. And so this is where I want to pick up of this book. I want to start reading this book because they realize the storm is coming. And they also realize that they can't go back. And Shooting Star is nowhere. They know she's got to be somewhere, that has gone back to help them some way, to bring help. But in the meantime, they hear the howling of wolves. And they also smell smoke. And they look and they see that in the distance there are flames in the forest from whence they've come. So they know that they need to get to shelter. And this is where the story picks up. This chapter is Into the Mine. JW, or Jimmy, felt a sense of deja vu. It felt like the Whispering Cave in Yellowstone all over again. Only there he had known the cave so well, and all the escape routes, the tunnels, a safe way out. He knew he could save the cousins and lead them back to their parents. The mine was a totally different experience. It had been closed for years, and he was unfamiliar with this structure. However, he realized that they all had to go in there. Now, I would like all of you to close your eyes and just put yourself in this darkness, in this mine. They didn't have a choice because the mine offered safety. They could build a fire at the entrance and keep it burning all night to keep the wolves away. They had food, water, flashlights, and lanterns. It would not be the most comfortable lodging, but they had blankets because it was cold at night in the mountains this high up. As he looked over at the two families who were depending on him, he heard a howl in the distance and knew the pack of wolves was coming. Time to enter the mine. Okay, let's gather all of our supplies and head into the mine. Park the Jeeps close by as a barrier to the entrance. Let's gather as much food from the sawmill as we can. We need to build a fire at the opening of the mine now. J.W. warned them as they followed his directions. Do we have to go in there? It's dark and scary, Parker said, who was the youngest of the cousins. He was pulling on J.W.'s sleeve and pointing at the dark opening to the mine. Don't worry, Parker. No bats. For he knew Parker was very afraid of bats. And we have flashlights and lanterns. It will be like camping in the forest at night, J.W. reassured the frightened little boy. Hey, Parker, it will be like flashlight tag that we play at your grandparents' house when it gets dark. This will be an adventure, Parker's dad told him as he picked him up and carried him toward the mine. Wood was stacked just inside the wolf mine shaft. The two families and J.W. had carried all the supplies inside, and a campfire was being built just at the entrance to the mine. Kate, the oldest of the cousins, and the girl in charge, handed J.W. the matches, and the pieces of wood began to smolder as he lit the kindling. Besides keeping animals away, the fire did provide warmth as the mine was cold and damp. The cousins and their parents huddled together as they shared leftover sandwiches and chips. They watched J.W. as he stood watch at the entrance and looked out over the silent town. They prayed that Shooting Star, the granddaughter of Chief Joseph, would make it back safely and bring the Rangers. Howling from many wolves brought the mine's residents to their feet. As they looked toward the forest and the road they had traveled to Kerwin, they could see figures approaching, loping along at a quick pace. The animals were trying to escape the fire and find a safe place. So far, the wind was blowing away from this deserted town. The wolves were bigger than they had expected. There were at least 6 of them. Kate stood stoically by her mom and dad, watching the scene unfold before them. Parker's dad was holding him. Harrison and Emma, only 2 months apart in age, were the next youngest, and they were hiding behind J.W. All were silent, although the woods probably knew that their prey was in the mine, as they had keen senses of smell. They all watched the wolves circle the jeeps, sniffing at the vehicles. Then there was snarling and more howling. The leader of the pack was a large, gray, dangerous-looking male with his teeth bared. He was angry at the flames that were keeping him and the rest of the animals from their dinner. Parker buried his face in his dad's shoulder and whimpered. J.W. knew that they could keep the fire going for quite some time, but he wanted the children to go farther into the mine, away from this threatening sight. He hoped that Shooting Star and Raven would make it down the hazardous trails and bring the needed horses to get out of here. J.W. also noticed that the wind was changing and beginning to blow in their direction. Not a good sign. Time to go deeper into the mine. I'd like all of you to go farther down the tunnels in the mine. Maybe if the wolves don't see us or smell our scent, they will retreat. I'll stoke the fire with more wood, so it should burn and help until help arrives, J.W. encouraged them, not telling them of the additional danger of the fire coming their way. He also knew that the wolves would be leaving on their own soon, even if they sensed the humans. They would be running for their lives up the forest-covered mountains to escape the oncoming fire. Aren't you coming with us? Kate worriedly asked. Oh, I'll be right along as soon as I take care of the fire, J.W. promised. Take the right tunnel. It looks to be the widest, with less fallen rocks, he observed. So the parents led their sons and daughters in the directions that J.W. had indicated. They had turned on their flashlights and were sweeping the walls and floors in front of them with a steady glow. The walls were damp and dripping with moisture. After traveling downward for a while, they noticed that there were additional tunnels that branched off to the left. Pickaxes, shovels, and lanterns lay discarded on the ground. It almost looked like the miners had fled the mine in a hurry. Large beams were bracing the ceiling of the mine, and they noticed that some of them appeared to be rotted. They also saw that the path they were following was narrowing, and piles of rubble could be seen up ahead. Going down the left tunnel seemed like the best option, and they turned in that direction, following the train tracks that led farther down the slope. "Wow, look at this!" Harrison exclaimed as he ran ahead with Parker, Tommy, and his dog Robin close behind as he pointed at the mine car on the tracks that had been used to carry gold and silver from the Wolf mine shaft. "Hey, there's rocks in here. Maybe there's some gold or silver," Harrison excitedly yelled back as he and his companions climbed into the car. "Come back here at once," the moms and dads ordered to no avail, their voices echoing off the walls and the ceiling. "I'll go and get them," Kate offered, already quickly moving toward her cousins and Tommy. And here is a picture, if you can see it, of them in the train car. Emma, who also had a keen gift of intuition, ran in the direction of her cousins, her flashlight casting eerie beams all around her. When she reached the car, she too hoisted herself into the vehicle. Kate had arrived at the scene and was trying to pull her sister from the car when the unthinkable happened. The car began to move, and in a split second, Kate made the heroic decision to join the adventurous occupants. As she tumbled into the car, Emma grabbed her, and the boys turned horrified eyes toward her. Meanwhile, Robin was barking loudly and frantically. Apparently, someone had leaned on the handle and switch that disengaged the brakes. Everyone froze in place, holding on to the side of the car as it gathered speed and headed downward into the depths of the Wolf mine shaft. The calls of their desperate parents and the fierce howling of the wolves grew fainter and fainter as they continued their dark descent. I'm going to continue reading a little bit more of what happened to them. In the mine car, Kate had kept her wits about her and was looking for a way to bring the vehicle to a stop. It was not traveling too fast, and the turns were not sharp. However, it was going at a speed that would be dangerous for them to try and jump out. Parker was hanging on to Kate, while Emma and Harrison were holding on to each other's hands as they braced themselves against the side of their prison. Robin was laying down at the feet of Tommy as he hugged his dog around the neck, silently praying for help. Kate crawled to the front of the car and saw a handle to the right. She thought that it must be the brake. At least she hoped so. "Okay, move aside," she instructed Tommy and Robin. "I think I found the brake. Let's see if this will stop the car," she told them. Kate tried to pull the handle from right to left, but it refused to budge. Soon Tommy came up, saw her struggle, stood up, and helped her. "Thank you, Tommy. Take hold of the handle." And both of them found they were able to move it. Suddenly, they felt a jolt as the handle grudgingly ground to the left. Ever so slowly, the cousins felt the train car coming to a halt. "Hooray!" they all yelled. However, their elation was short-lived, as they realized they were on the middle of a rickety wooden bridge that was crossing a chasm with no sight of the bottom. As they looked over the sight, they gasped and shuddered. "Should we get the train going again?" Harrison asked breathlessly. Kate looked at the situation and knew there was no other way. "All right, don't anyone move or get up. Don't look down." She and Tommy knew what they had to do. They threw the lever again, and the car began creaking along at a much slower pace. The vehicle made it to the platform to the left and applied the brakes just in case. It appeared that this was the end of the line for the train car. As the cousins exited the car in the front, climbing shakily over it, they found a heap of cold gray rocks. Suddenly, Kate heard something. She knew what was happening. She pushed her sister and boys from the edge and farther into the tunnel as the breaking and crashing of the bridge echoed across the walls and ceiling of the mine. It fell down, down through the darkness until a faraway splash was heard, and it came to a final resting place. in the river that ran through the base of the mountains. The cousins were stunned. What were they going to do? How are they going to get back to the other side? The falling bridge had started a new chain of events. The Broken Arrow mine, left unattended for so many years, was beginning to come apart. Emma saw her greatest fears realized, and she remembered when she had first seen the dense forest as they traveled to the Flying J and had felt something. Now she knew what it was. They were in the middle of a cave-in. So you will have to finish reading this in or get it on my website, which is fourcousinsmysteries.com. You can buy it through Amazon or Barnes and Noble, but if you buy it from me, you're going to get a signed copy, not just from me, but from the Four Cousins. And I truly believe your children will truly love the stories of the Four Cousins. They are wonderful. And again, this is The Secret of the Broken Arrow Mine. And I invite you all to come back tomorrow, where I am going to take you to The Case of the Mysterious Mansion, my Christmas mystery. So please come back to me tomorrow. If you have any other questions, I'll be happy to answer them about whatever you saw today. Thank you so much for joining me. I love having you, and I wish you a beautiful, beautiful afternoon and evening ahead. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.